You can sink into the moment. You can make prayers of your hands, and you can worship her beauty. And if you can do that in the right way, you will see her transform. And suddenly she is not seen as beautiful. She is beautiful seen.
Our question today is from Madison, who writes that her self-image is affecting her ability to get into the proper submissive state of mind with her husband. While her husband has never complained about her body and even seems obsessed with her clit and labia during BDSM play, Madison sees nothing but flaws when she's naked around him. She's been struggling most of her life with self-esteem issues, and her husband will want her to do things that make her feel even more self-conscious about her body. While he's taken pains to reassure her, she feels that his reassurance is something she'd expect from a partner who is being nice or vanilla.
This one hits pretty interestingly for me. I've actually struggled with self-image quite a bit myself, and still do in many ways. I lost a decent amount of weight recently and finally have the beginnings of a six-pack, and hopefully will continue to more and get my full six-pack by the end of the year. And yet, there are many days where I feel exactly the same, even though visually I can see in the mirror that I have lost weight, that I'm looking better by a standard kind of concept. What I'm getting at here is that it's not my partner's job to reassure me. It's nice to have, but it cannot be the contingent for sexual engagement. And something I will say I take pride in that has always been true for me is no matter how I'm feeling about my body, when I engage with a girl sexually, it all gets dropped and left behind. I am focused here now on this erotic interchange with 100% of my attention. I'll go back to being self-conscious afterward. And so that is an important ability to control your attention, to say, I'm going to sink into this moment and be here in this erotic space and leave everything else behind. I think that I object pretty strongly to a lot of women who think that it's like, oh, well, he needs to reassure me more, or he needs to... No, you need to focus and realize that eroticism is important. More important, and you can see similar issues with women. Oh, I can't get into sex if the dishes aren't done, or if the room's not clean. I'm like, well, get your shit together. Focus. Like, this is important. Like, you don't go to work and say, oh, I can't work because I didn't do the dishes at home. No, you focus on work. And so I think the notion of importance, the notion of saying my sex life, my erotic life is important and requires me to focus and drop into that moment and be fully present in that moment and leave everything else behind, is an important erotic skill that I think many women don't have, first of all, and are culturally excused out of.
I wonder what your thoughts on her using the term vanilla to potentially describe her husband, who, when she reassures her, those reassurances come across as being too vanilla or too nice. I thought that was a bit of a red flag from her, because it seems like her self-esteem is so deeply seated, she feels like the only person that might offer her reassurance or might love her the way she was is a person who is vanilla or just being nice. Whereas I think what she's describing in her BDSM dynamic here is more of a dom-sub relationship, because she talks about how she's submissive and her husband makes her do these things that make her even more self-conscious about her body.
Sure.
But if she feels that the reassurance is coming from a place that's not genuine, then that in itself is very problematic for a BDSM-based dynamic, because she can truly never be submissive to somebody who she feels is quote-unquote being nice or vanilla to her.
There are several layers to this, in my opinion. First is something I talk about quite a bit, is the fact that eroticism and comfort, security, reassurance are opposites. They are in opposite directions. Eroticism is diving into the shadows, and BDSM suffers no cowards, is something we say very often. And so the challenge here is, yes, it is more vanilla. It is playing on the comfort, security, closeness. I differentiate in the book between closeness and intimacy, which I pull from a book called The Art of Intimacy by Malone and Malone. She is pulling on that kind of closeness circuit, comfort, security, reassurance. But you cannot play erotically there. Those are, in fact, opposites. So she is pushing him into a non-intimate space, into a closeness space, and then complaining that it doesn't feel intimate through her self-esteem struggles. So, yes, that is part of it. The other part of it is, hey, I want to be attractive and I feel self-conscious about my body, about how I look, and I'm trying to get a six-pack and all these things. But in the moment, I have to accept that my partner is telling me the truth. I have to believe that. And if she is expressing attraction and interest in me sexually, doubting that is a violation. There's a red flag there that, hey, my partner is saying she wants to suck my dick and wants to be a dirty slut with me and engage in really intense BDSM play. Well, she's got to be attracted to me somewhat. I have to be able to accept that. I have to accept her desire as a true manifestation of her attraction. And so, this is a great book, though, called The King Killer Chronicle. And one of the characters is talking about a girl who doesn't believe she's that beautiful. And he says, you can tell her she's beautiful, you can try and reassure her, you can try and comfort her, you can do all these things. And unfortunately, that will only work so much. And he says, but there's another way. You can sink into, I'm misquoting, this is not a direct quote, but I'm paraphrasing the concept. You can sink into the moment, you can make prayers of your hands, and you can worship her beauty. And if you can do that in the right way, you will see her transform, and suddenly she is not seen as beautiful, she is beautiful seen. And there is some notion of transition there that I think both parties have to be willing to go with. Is he has to sink deeply into that erotic state where he is, but it sounds like he is. Yeah. And she has to be willing to go. And she has to transition from being seen as beautiful into being beautiful seen. And that does take commitment. It takes a willingness to jump into the rapids of BDSM and eroticism. But it's also where all the rewards are from this type of sex, is diving into those shadows and allowing herself to believe, for at least the duration of the scene, that she is as beautiful as he is saying she is.
Yeah, the work really, I think, in this particular example is mostly on her and less her partner, given that she says her partner has already given her reassurances and seems to be obsessed with certain parts of her body. So he is viscerally attracted to her and viscerally playing with her, but she doesn't seem to believe it herself. And unfortunately, she is projecting the reassurances that he's giving her into something very negative, saying that, well, if he's reassuring me, then he must be some beta person who doesn't know what a beautiful woman is, because I'm not a beautiful woman and he thinks I'm beautiful. And that is a very dangerous projection to be engaged in. There's only so much that he can do because he seems to already be doing as much as possible to reassure her. I wonder, though, if there is a way past this, and this is me picking your brain on this because I don't know what the right maneuver here is, that if you were to transmute the insecurities about herself into a kink play where it becomes the basis of humiliation, that in some respects her imperfections, when she, for example, says that he makes me do things that actually make my insecurities feel even worse. So I could just be imagining that if she's, let's for example say, insecure about the way her breasts look, he makes her stand in poses where her breasts are like in full display. She can't cover them up, and maybe he pays a lot of attention to them and whatever. But when in doing so, he transmutes that into a kink context, saying that she's exposing her vulnerabilities to him because he has so much control over her, he can do whatever he wants. I think that would almost be edge play, especially if he understood that this was something that she was highly sensitive about. And it would have to be, and it could also go wrong quite easily.
Very easily. Yes, it could go wrong very easily. Could it work? Sure. I think even in other episodes, we've talked about how the more deeply striking something is, the richer it can be in a BDSM context if people find a way to common ground. And this is a similar thing, is that like to the degree that she is self-conscious, if they find a way to engage there and she is able to focus on the moment and trust in his view of her beauty and to submit to his view of her beauty, then they could have an incredibly rich scene there. But yes, they are playing pretty close to the edge. And again, this is something I would say is BDSM is in the twilight of the half real. And this is leaning pretty strongly toward the edge of reality for her. Now, I'm not saying they can't, but it is dangerously close to the edge of reality for her. And I do agree. I think that she has some work to do here, whether that's in therapy or that's journaling or her own self, whatever the deal is. But you cannot reassure the unreassurable. If she fundamentally believes she is unattractive in a way that cannot be addressed by the outside, then she will twist everything that's happening around that narrative. Is that if her husband finds her attractive, it's because he is a beta and insufficient. And only someone unworthy would find someone like her attractive. Now you're bending the truth around a fixed fact that or idea that prevents you from moving. You're stuck at that idea. And now there are other things here. One of the ways I address my feelings of self-esteem is by getting in the gym, getting fit, so that I have some objective evidence to counter those thoughts with. When I have gained more weight and I can't see my abs anymore at all, let alone a six-pack, but it really becomes invisible, well, you know what? That's not as attractive. And so it's harder to fight those thoughts. Now you can see the beginnings of my abs at least. And like, hopefully if I lose some more weight, I will have a six-pack. And then I can stand in the mirror and there's objective evidence to counter those negative thoughts. And to say, okay, I've done the work. I've been in the gym. I've lost the weight. I am where I need to be. If I'm feeling unattractive, that's not concordant with reality. And my mind needs to change, not the reality. Now that also can go to a negative place. You start talking about anorexia, you start talking about body dysmorphia, you start talking about, and then things can get really negative in that direction as well. There's no easy answers. There's no single easy answer, because even if you adjust your body to try to provide yourself with reassurance, you can go too far. And so, and in the other direction, right? The beautiful at any size kind of movement where you're 400 pounds and like, oh, I'm beautiful. And like, well, no, you're not. And so there's no safety in any direction. There's no easy, simple answer in any direction. It takes some inner work to say, okay, if I'm significantly overweight, maybe that's why I don't, and maybe my husband is attracted to me because he loves me emotionally and he connects with me, but I recognize that there is something that I'm not bringing to the table that I should be. But if I'm at a decent weight and my husband's expressing attraction to me, then I have to also say, well, maybe I need to accept that I am beautiful as I am. And so you have to find that middle ground, that place of wisdom where you can balance all the competing forces of, should I lose weight? Or maybe actually I'm fine as I am. Or maybe I need to just accept that my husband finds me beautiful, and maybe I am beautiful, and maybe I'm just fixated on this idea falsely, and I need to give up my fear. Fear and eroticism are opposites, and I have to let go of that fear. And it's a particular type of fear, because there is fear play, like there's CNC and rape play, and so. But this kind of fear, the fear of loss, the fear of being devalued, that is generally speaking anathema to eroticism.